Do you remember what your reaction was like the first time you walked onto a film set and what movie or series was it?
Oh wow, that's a great question.
What was number one?
Well,
Ahí está, la pequeña asesina.
I recently saw the first episodes and I was surprised by the way the current world is reflected. Many people seem to live in another reality. The decisions of individuals are subject to others, and obviously, humanity is killing the planet. How do you think Fallout can shake the audience? Because I think it's more than a video game adaptation.
That is always and will always be, I guess, the tone of Fallout. You know, to be a satirical commentary, on current events, and to be at the same time this like wild, crazy, zany, circus-like, violent, adventure for people that is rooted in this strange world that's like akin to ours, but also akin to a past sort of venture of our history. You know what I mean? Pushed into the future and then drastically changed. So it's I think that the tone will always be that for Fallout, and it's certainly one that was for both of us like so exciting to jump into. I mean, when we first started reading these scripts, it was like, what in the world is this? You know what I mean? Ella said so greatly the other. She was talking to me about how when she reads something, it's like when you want to see it, that means you probably want to like get in it. You know what I mean? It's like you're reading something that's so good that you want to see it. You want to be a viewer of it, but even better, I guess, to get the opportunity to be a part of it.
I'm always wary of trying to put a message into anything that we work on. I think one of the things we were drawn to with this project is the project from the beginning has been political, satirical, subversive, and that seems to be kind of essential to the identity of the show. What I like about Fallout is that it doesn't necessarily have answers, because I don't feel like I have answers to any of these questions that we're talking about, but it does pose a lot of, I think, pressing and maybe even urgent questions, which I think, the best shows can do. And if you get people thinking a little bit about, there's so much conversation these days. It feels like there's a sort of fever pitch of people wanting to talk about the end of the world and another civil war and all this acrimony, all this anger, all this hatred that people are kind of fomenting. And you kind of look at it in this show with a little bit of a sense of humor, which is with a little bit of expiation for us on the set, but say, is that really where we want to go? Is that really where we want the world to go?
La misión de los refugios es importante para la humanidad. Salir a la superficie un día y reiniciar la civilización. ¿Me puedes resumir estos últimos 200 años?
One thing I love about Lucy is her innocence to the outside world. A lot of things surprise her. Do you remember what your reaction was like the first time you walked onto a film set and what movie or series was it?
oh wow, that's a great question.
What was number one?
Well, I've been acting since I was a kid, so my first time walking onto a film set or anything like that, I was actually 8 years old and I was doing a commercial, and I was sort of too young to really understand what everyone was doing. I didn't really understand why there were so many people. I thought it would just be like a bloke with a camera and me, and then like the other actors, and it really blew my mind, and it scared me at the time because I didn't really understand what's going on. Interestingly, I think that the journey that Lucy goes on, really all of the characters go on. I was thinking about this last night. I think it's very similar to my personal journey, and I think the journey of a lot of actors and a lot of creatives, where you have to decide when you're suffering and struggling, if you're going to let that change you, and if you're going to adapt to the industry, which can be kind of like the wasteland sometimes, or if you're going to keep hold of your golden rule, like to sell out morally, do I become a bad person to survive in this industry, or do I just like keep being a nice person and get potentially screwed over? It's kind of what Lucy goes through in the wasteland.
Oh, geez.
I worked for a while putting out cones to block traffic in the streets of Toronto, so that the film crew could come 2 days later. So that was my introduction to movie magic, was being in a van at 4 a.m. putting out cones and being yelled at by people. I don't even know to this day what the production was, but that was that actually is a pretty typical first step into the entertainment business, where you're like, what is this? Why are they yelling at me? Okay, go home now. What did I just work on? I have no idea. Yeah. But I remember the driver of the van turning to me and saying, "Welcome to the Dream Factory." And that was really fun.
Ves el yermo y te das cuenta de que es un caos.
Kyle, you will always be one of the most important actors in science fiction with films like Dune, and now you are returning to these grounds. Yes. What do you consider makes the story of Fallout so special and so beloved?
Well, you got an enormous world, and working with one of the great world builders of all time here to my right, Jonah Nolan, it's an absolute pleasure and overwhelming to walk onto the set. But you combine that with some really personal, intimate stories, very real relationships. And it was one of the things that I concentrated on the most, which was creating the dynamic between myself and Ella Purnell, who plays Lucy. And to make that relationship believable and feel like we'd been together since she was little, and that I was everything to her and that she was everything to me. So you take that idea of that story, that intimacy, and you put it against this backdrop, this tremendous backdrop, and I think you have something very interesting.
Jonathan, I saw the first few minutes at its premiere at South by Southwest. It was a great experience to see the reaction of the attendees, especially with that scene showing multiple nuclear bombs, something that I think coincidentally connects you to your brother. So has Christopher seen Fallout yet? If so, what he say to you, or what do you think he will say to you?
Yeah, no, we always still watch and read each other's stuff, and vice versa. I'm not sure I would know what to do without feedback from him, and I know that he always finds my feedback comforting when we're going through it. He has watched it. I'll let him speak for himself about what he thought. It was a fun moment when we realized we were sort of playing in a somewhat similar space, or a similar set of historical ideas with a very different tone. Was fun.
¿Qué está pasando aquí?
I must confess that I'm a big fan of stories that mix humor with action, and Fallout does so much more than this. We can be a quiet wedding or a normal day at work, and in less than a minute that ends in a bloodbath. How did you experience these scenes as soon as the director said action?
The pace that Jonah moves at, it's very fast, and I love that, because you kind of just keep going. It's just like a snowball that just keeps building up and building up. Just the scale of every single scene, every single fight sequence, like you brought up, the stunts, the production value, the sets, everything is so dense and grand and vast. And so that you sort of, when you're in it, there's not really time to look around and admire it. But it's tempting, like there's a few times that he filmed our raw reactions to seeing sets for the first time. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to stay in character, because you just want to grin and admire it and, congratulate everybody that made it. But you have to, you got to do your job, I guess.